Hello, welcome to episode 6 of the Philly Multifamily Podcast. I'm here with Matan Shmuel of RAM Development Partners and Shmuel Tax
Shmuel Law Group.
Law Group.
Shmuel Law Group, LLC in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Please, introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Sam, for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm a big fan of the podcast.
Thank you.
I've listened to every episode so far. I love what you're doing. I love what the Scope team is doing here in Philadelphia. I'm looking forward to the day that I buy some real estate from the Scope team and finance some real estate with Scope Capital. And I'm glad to be here.
I look forward to that day as well. And thank you for being here. I appreciate all of your support. You gave me notes on a couple episodes, and I think it was really beneficial for me. And you asked to be on the podcast, so here you are, like asking you shall receive.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was getting into when I asked. I said it casually, but you took the in, and I'm here. I'm here to help your fans and your audience, answer some questions about real estate.
If anything, it's a good excuse for us to hang out on a Friday afternoon.
We don't need it, but we used to be able to do it anyway because we shared an office.
Yeah.
And now you're at this new space. It's a great new space, but it's far. So we really have to work on getting together now more often.
We have to put the effort in.
Yeah, which is important. You got to build real estate's a relationship business, and you got to put the effort into the relationship.
Yes. Tell me your backstory and how you got into the real estate business.
Sure. I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney about 10 years. I've always had a fascination with real estate, but I started my career as a tax attorney. And as a tax attorney, I spent a lot of time, seeing other people's deals. And I worked at a few big firms before starting my own firm about 3 years ago. So my progress as an attorney was being the guy who looked at everyone's agreements, everyone's transactions in business M&A, in real estate, investment structuring, from a tax perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start doing that, you start to learn everybody else's piece of business,
sure,
which is a really great benefit for tax lawyers. So about 5 years into my career, I said, hey, I'm making some good money now, paid off some debt. I want to get into real estate. The only way I know how as a full-time attorney is to be a limited partner. And, I've structured about 1,000 real estate syndications. So, I know what this looks like. Mm-hmm. And so I started shopping and letting everyone I knew in real estate, hey, I got money. I'm ready to put it to work. Find me. And nobody wanted my money.
What?
No one wanted my money. And I don't know why, right? Maybe they were scared to bring a lawyer into the cap table. You don't bring a wolf into the hen house, but no one wanted my money. I finally got in, and I think that's a big barrier to entry for a lot of people. They don't know how to get into a syndication.
Sure.
Because the LPs want someone that they trust. They look for someone they know. And the GPs, the sponsors of these syndication deals, they usually go to friends and family. It's easiest to find trust between friends and family, but friends and family don't always have the money. So you go to friends of friends, and then you start to get into legal questions, right? People start to become too unrelated to me. Is this becoming a solicitation? Is this becoming a general marketing? Do I need to lawyer this up?
Right.
And so in my early career, I finally got into some deals, and I was excited. I was happy. And, I don't know if they were great deals, but I was putting my money to work, and I was diversifying, and I felt good.
Get that passive income.
That evolved a little bit to a point where I had a client at my old firm that was coming to me for a lot of, advice because they were doing some very technical real estate acquisition around quieting title and buying really distressed property with distressed titles, 100-year-old titles with multi-generations, in between of decedents. And they were doing some really interesting stuff, buying parcels that were adjacent but not dated correctly, and just doing really clever things And I got into bed with them, and I started putting more money into their deals to the point where, I kind of went out on my own as a lawyer, and right away we hooked up to form a little partnership where we bought, a lot of property in this way together. And we did pretty good. But, as a lawyer, I tell people all the time, partnerships are temporary. It's just how temporary are they? Some
Right.
partnerships last a year. So the best relationships are temporary too. You just want that temperness to be as long as possible, right? So you could have a 40-year temporary partnership, and I call that a win.
Right.
And so my partnership with those guys, as we were great at taking title, and we were really weak at construction and finishing projects. And so we had the highest spreads on, cleaning up land and selling it. And so the partnership kind of wound down because we sold all the stuff we did together. Those guys had more interest in building stuff. I had more interest in building stuff, but not with them. And it was just a clean break. It worked out well for all of us because we all had some milestones in our life. So we moved across the country from each other. But that kind of cemented my GP status. Like, I didn't want to
Sure.
go back to just being an LP. I wanted to be an operator. And during COVID, working out of a co-working space in Philadelphia, I met my now partners who are also attorneys, and we had a lot in common, and we kind of all had been in real estate in a similar way to how I was, with partners who maybe weren't as sophisticated. And I think we brought our talents together, and we also brought a tolerance together, because as an attorney, day in, day out, you're dealing with conflict, and you're dealing with partners' conflicts.
Right.
And one of the things that's great about being partners with an attorney is you don't want to just dissolve it. You don't want to go for divorce right away with the first argument. You work through your problems because you know the cost of business divorce, and you know
Right.
it's not worth it. So,
Right.
yeah, if you could get 80% out of each other, you're happy with the partnership. And we have a great partnership. We have a great thing. We all bring different skill set to the table, and it seems to work really well. Our investors are pretty happy with us.
In our business, you always want to leverage other people's money or just experiences, right? So,
Mhm.
like, just starting out, you got to see how 1,000 different transactions were cut and executed, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would tell you, starting out, some clients of my law firms were definitely overpaying for my very little skill in, drafting documents, right?
Right.
As I got better, maybe I cost more, but my actual time on the bill hit less. But I got to learn from the wisdom of people with 30 years of experience, my senior, teaching me, and clients who I never could have brought at the time to the table, who had, hundreds, if not thousands of apartments and hotels and, different development deals, getting to see all of that, and you just soak it up. Just like as a broker,
Yeah.
you maybe know multifamily in Philadelphia. You might see 20 different asset classes depending on who's coming to you, who your clients are, and what they have.
Right.
When we started talking, like, people look at me and they get surprised to hear I'm syndicating, 6-unit apartment here, now commercial mixed use here, now 57 on this side, now 32 on podium over here. And I'm still doing single families if I can find them.
Right.
So, because in real estate, it doesn't have to be an or, it can always be an and. You can get good at something and you don't lose the skill of being good at that. You just can level up your skill on the next type of project.
Right. It's a very scalable business. And like, once you have the infrastructure built out, which I think you've done a pretty good job of doing.
Yeah,
and,
thank you.
it becomes a plug and play business, right? Where you just throw in the inputs of land, and you got your people and vendors and subs that you just throw the plans at, and then kind of like build it out, and
it just gets easier, right?
Yeah.
The more you do it, everything gets easier. The relationships with your lenders get stronger. relationships with your contractors get sharper. You don't have to use the same contractor every time, but you can get better at ballparking something to the point where when I just started, I was making a lot of mistakes in construction, and we paid for it, right? We paid for it in smaller profits on the out sales, but uh, you learn, and you learn how to design a more efficient building. You learn how to make an apartment look a lot sexier and cleaner and get
What
you
units
higher
at
price
least the
per square
easiest?
foot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you learn if you need 2.5 bathrooms or two or 1.5 or one. You learn if you need 2 bedrooms. You learn why you don't want 3 bedrooms.
What's the hottest product out there right
It
now?
depends on the market. It depends on the neighborhood. It's
Neighborhood.
really neighborhood dependent, right? Like in West Philly, finding that 2 bedrooms. I built a lot of 2 bedrooms. Also in North Philadelphia, you're dealing with people who have families, and so there's not just a single person. Usually, single people don't live alone in North Philadelphia. So try to build more twos than ones, because twos let a mom and a few kids grow into the space.
They stay longer.
Yeah, which is what you want. Tenant turnover is good, but yearly turnover is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Keep a tenant in for 3 years, gives that, the annual step increases, and then hopefully a light cosmetic renovation, followed by like a catch up to market rent increase, which really changes your performance.
Right.
So,
right. Interesting. What market do you like the best right now? Sub-market.
It's going to be controversial, but it's not Philadelphia.
Oh no!
Oh no! I think Philadelphia's in an election season. Zoning is challenging. The politics is challenging. The neighborhoods are challenging. Communities have expectations that they're rightfully entitled to have, but we're starting to be met in the good times, but maybe can't be met by developers to the same level as the economics have shifted and deals have gotten compressed. Right.
Sure.
So, when you're gentrifying a neighborhood, it's a dirty word, right? But when you're building new construction in a neighborhood on vacant land next to a lot of older housing inventory, people get concerned.
Right.
And they want to make sure that the people that are going to be moving into the neighborhood are respectful of the ways of life of the existing citizens. And they're not wrong for having those concerns. Sometimes the community groups get organized and they ask for certain concessions, which, if the project can support it, you agree to it. If it can't, you might not be able to get your zoning variance, or you might have challenges with like keeping the peace between your tenants and the existing neighbors. But we've been lucky.
Yeah.
But just right now, like the climate is hard, and there are places in South Jersey that are easier, and maybe they're not as sexy, and maybe you're not going to get the kind of appreciation that you get in the city, but you can build. And there's plenty of people that need housing in small little suburban towns in South Jersey.
Yeah, they've been neglected for so long that there's probably not.
And there's a lot of like quaint
supply.
towns.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of quaint towns in the PA suburbs too. You just you gotta find them, and you gotta have a will to do deals there. And
because the demand is there. The demand is super strong in the suburbs. I think it's one of the tightest rental markets in America, for good reason.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's a rising tide, right? Like people's expectations at the entry level of real estate, even like workforce housing and rentals, are high. People, if they're going to rent an apartment, they want a certain quality standard of living. They want stainless steel appliances, they want air conditioning, they want in-unit washer dryer. They're going to appreciate granite countertops. These are becoming the baseline, which is good, right? It's symptomatic of progress. You're raising the quality standard of how people on the lower end of the real estate spectrum are living.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that much more expensive. And so, I found a lot of success building to that and asking for a few dollars more per month and finding people who want to stay in the neighborhood that they're from, but live in a little bit better product.
Right. How would you coach someone who's looking to get into real estate? What would be their first step? You took a very untraditional route.
I know. But at the same time, I guess I have to meet people where they are, right? So depending who the coachee is, like if they're an attorney, I would say you have a skill set, right? Because real estate involves a lot of technical legal knowledge that people either have to pay for or you bring to the table as, sweat equity.
Mm-hmm.
So if I met a young attorney, I would say, go learn real estate deals and go participate as a limited partner. Go put your money to work because you get a lot of insight being part of the team, being on the operating agreement, getting the updates, letting someone with more experience kind of lead you through a process of how to get architectural plans, how to get the engineering plans, how to go get a building permit, hiring a GC. If your sponsor is willing to share how the sausage is made, you can learn a lot. And it's pretty cheap tuition, right? It's actually tuition that hopefully is going to be paying you back.
Probably the same cost as some like e-courses you can buy online.
Yeah.
From the influencers.
Probably right. Yeah. If you're a high school kid who really wants to get into real estate and you grew up in a neighborhood in Philadelphia, I would say play to your strengths, right? Which is, go get your real estate license, go learn how the brokerage side of the business works, but also go connect with wholesalers, because what wholesalers are always looking for is a bird dog. It's a person willing to go knock on doors and put out flyers and bring people from the neighborhood who might have a property, might have inherited a property, might have, know the elderly neighbor who's moving away to Florida. And can bring the deal to somebody who can help shape the deal, package it, right? So there's always opportunities to participate. You have to be willing to work and hustle, and you have to know how to find a mentor, and you might need, multiple mentors, but like come from your strength, right? If your strength is ground level relationships, go connect with the wholesalers or with an acquisitions person at a brokerage. If your strength is, legal acumen, come in at a little different angle. If your strength is construction, right, you're really handy.
Mm-hmm.
You go connect with somebody who knows how to buy real estate and say, hey, help me buy this. We'll partner up and I'll do the work, and start, if you know your limits, right, start with a cosmetic cleanup. Like, so you can get in there, you can change out all the trim, paint, put new floors down.
Yeah.
And, turn a property around, make a profit. But there's plenty of ways to get in without cash. And there's ways to get in with cash. And there's no shortage of information out there on the internet for people who don't have any money, how to get into real estate.
Right.
If you have the deal, you can find the money, or you can find the partners who can help bring the money.
The money, if you have a good deal, the money always just shows up.
It seems like it, but it is still a lot of work to go get the money. As I said, in the beginning, I struggled as the money or as a piece of the money to get into the deal, to find the sponsor.
I still find that hard to believe.
Now, as the sponsor, I'm out there hustling every day to get the money, and a lot of people have put money with me, and
myself included.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, it was that you were one of the easiest guys to get the money in, because you kind of knew the business and you believed in the team, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But that money has a timeline to it, right? So I've got your money now. It's got to go work for a few years before I can come back to you and say, you want to go again, right? You want to see performance. So you're always looking for new money relationships, because you don't want to overextend your relationships and have people feel like sort of tapped out, right? Especially now, people had maybe unrealistic expectations about cashing out, at 3%.
Exponential growth of values of properties. And
now we're having conversations with investors where, properties are stabilized. We didn't get the, full cash out we were looking for, but your money's not gone. It's just not accessible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're not liquid, but you're safe,
Yeah.
right? And we're making money. Our rents are higher than our costs, so everything is good. We're just waiting for new construction takes some time to mature, right? Season. So
Yeah.
that's where you are.
Even if like you're buying an existing cash flowing building, I still say it takes 6 months for it to season, as you as the operator need to
Sure.
season, right?
Sure. Yeah, you got to go through a couple cycles of paying your taxes quarterly and
Yeah.
figuring out if that radiator works or not. Buy something in the summer, and then come wintertime, your boiler stops working, you got problems.
Back to liquidity, though. We had a very interesting week this week with many of the regional banks
Yeah.
going through a liquidity crisis.
Yeah.
I think that this is my opinion, right? This is not fact. That if you are going to put your money into something, what we just saw occur with the banks and their consumer lending and business lending practices being illiquid and being backed by corporate tech debt and
Right.
stuff like that. With real estate, you have the actual asset that's cash flowing, securing your loan and your investment, right? Like
Yeah.
a lot of these other crappy lending,
Well, Silicon
whatever.
Valley Bank might have been more aggressive than most regional banks because they lent to tech founders on the basis of
Their
there being a
valuations.
later round that was going to get funded by existing VC.
Right.
Which, if you talk to existing VC, that was never a guarantee. They never purported it, but their history showed that it kind of was a guarantee, right? And then SoftBank over the last 5 years throwing money at everything,
Right.
anytime, absurd amounts of it. It caused this sort of tech frenzy
Yeah.
that got really hot.
And with
cooled
tech,
down.
there's no physical assets, really, right?
That's the challenge, right? I'm a real estate guy. You're a real estate guy. We like the fact that there's bricks. Like if everything goes bad, I can take these bricks and use them for something else, right?
Okay.
But
in theory, yes.
like you buy stock in a company, and a lot of the value of that stock is the goodwill of the company, which is an intangible, and it has a lot of value.
Sure.
Right. But companies can get wiped out. And look at Sears, right? Actually, Sears was like an American icon institution.
Yeah.
And what kept Sears in business for like the last 30 years of its run was the fact that it was sitting on some of the most valuable real estate across America.
Yeah.
Because it owned all of its stores, right? And so, like, as Sears liquidated in bankruptcy because they could no longer operate it as a business, the thing that gave shareholders some of their money back was the sale of all of that company real estate.
Interesting.
Real estate is tangible, and if you buy real estate on a performance basis, that means it's cash flowing and you're earning a profit on the net positive rent,
right,
as opposed to buying real estate for speculation of appreciation, then you're going to be fine in a liquidity crunch, right? Where you can't get credit so easily to replace existing credit.
Right.
But if you're running a pure appreciation play, like has been the case in many markets, you find yourself kind of tapped out.
It's tough.
Yeah. But we're old school, right? It takes a lot longer to become a billionaire owning real estate. You
Right.
own a lot of real estate.
Yeah.
You create a product that's digital, software based, and everyone can use it from mom and pop B2B to enterprise level B&B. You're going to be a billionaire.
Yeah. And like we talked about scalability with real estate, yes, it's scalable, but nowhere near in terms as close to scalable as tech, right?
Right. And you look at WeWork, right, which tried to merge the two. It was a real estate company, but it was masquerading as a tech company. And for a while, they were getting tech VC partners who didn't really understand that at the end of the day, this is a real estate company.
Right.
Until it became very apparent that that's what it was, and the company collapsed.
I feel like every decade or so they come out with like a new type of WeWork or something.
Every decade or so, there's an Israeli fraudster that emerges, and it's always an Israeli guy. Yeah.
Let's talk about interest rates.
Yeah, they're down a little bit right now.
A little bit. They fell off a cliff on Monday and then bounced back, and now it's like around 3.5%.
Yeah. So,
is this the end? Is this the end of high interest rates?
I asked my bankers, I asked my financial advisors, I asked everyone who has an opinion about this, and nobody wants to commit to an answer, but it seems like the Fed was focused on bringing the frenzy for investment down.
Yeah.
Right? People sitting on the sidelines with capital ready to deploy. Was creating a lot of upward pressure and inflation on equity markets, right? And with this massive realization that some of these banks are under a lot of pressure, it actually may have cooled people's ability to deploy capital, right? So we may have seen...
Are you sure about that? Because essentially what they've done is just guarantee that all their money is there.
Question, right? But it could be that a couple of bank collapses might have done the Fed's work for it, and the Fed might not have to raise rates. I can't imagine the bloodbath on Wall Street if the Fed raises rates next week after this news. But I also think that the Fed was too quick to step in to guarantee deposits, which, FDIC limits were a check on the risk of the bank, right? The internal risk of the bank.
Yeah.
And I think that it seems like the Fed, it seems like this cat and mouse game of regulation and market participants, like the regulators are never going to achieve the desired outcomes because the people who make moves in the market are so quick to adapt to the regulation that comes out or the decisions from the regulators that comes out.
It shows when the fact that all the people whose accounts were in jeopardy are people with more than $250K in their bank account. When they cause a stink about it over the weekend, the government works overtime to make sure they're
the optics aren't good. I don't know if the optics of chain reaction of bank failures would be better for the country.
Yeah, I don't know. If you look at what the S&P 500 does, that's probably one of the best indicators. It's a nothing burger. It's flat.
It's an index, right?
Yeah.
And because they've priced it in, right? They've priced it. If anything, there might be more risk coming, right?
Yeah.
Because now, and you're hearing a lot of language now everywhere about systemic risk to the financial system, to the banking system, right?
Yeah.
And, systemically important banks, like these big top 4, top 5 banks. And there's no reason for those banks not to get even more aggressive.
Yeah,
right? Well, because those are the too big to fail banks,
and they've been gobbling up small banks since the last recession.
Yeah,
and this is only going to accelerate that process.
Yeah, and us in the real estate business, a lot of our capital comes from community banks and regional banks. Those are the banks that are closer to the ground on a lot of these loans and understand the market. The big banks do CMBS loans, they do stabilized property loans, they do big portfolio loans. But for a developer like me that's not building, a center city skyscraper, I have no business talking to a big bank. The regional banks are the ones that understand me as a borrower, my business model, and the actual property I'm going to put together.
Right.
And so
they have a vested interest in the community to flourish.
Yeah.
So
and they also,
that's their advantage.
Yeah, their banking charter is to work in this geography, right? Not to work nationwide.
Yeah.
And is to make business loans and construction loans. And they're good at that. That's what they know how to do. And so if there's risk to regional banks sort of getting bought up, you wonder what's going to happen to the landscape here. Are there going to be a lot of regional bank mergers coming to shore up balance sheets, to help sort of diversify some balance sheets, and what that's going to mean for us borrowers, because our relationships might be tied to 2 or 3 banks. If those all combine, now I have to go form some new relationships to make sure all my eggs aren't in one basket, or it's just a lot of uncertainty.
I saw also that like the Fed added $300 billion to their balance sheet this week.
So they bought up all the.
I don't know what that means.
They bought up all the 1.5% treasuries.
Right.
So they injected liquidity to banks by buying up
all these
treasuries
that they made.
Out of the low interest treasuries for those banks now to go out and buy 3.5% treasuries.
Interesting.
And I guess that was and they bought them at par value. What they did was they loaned against them at par value, because those.
Are you an economist or an attorney? I can't tell.
I just have to read a lot. But they loaned the part of the relief program that they created was to loan to banks on their balance sheet at the face value of these treasuries, even though the market value of these treasuries is a discount from the face value. So they gave more liquidity to the banks. And that, I guess, averts the crisis of
them being
illiquidity, right?
Yeah.
And deposit runs, but at the cost of creating a false floor in the marketplace for these bonds, right? If you could get face value for them today in a debt instrument as opposed to selling them, you can hold them to maturity. It's just free money to these banks.
Right.
And because at maturity, they'll theoretically be worth their face value.
They have to be, right?
Yeah. So, but they're long-term bonds, so it's a long way. So it's what's the bank going to do with that cash now? Is it going to go make risky loans? Is it going to make riskier investments? I don't know. Is it going to tie it up in long-term securities or shorter-term securities? I don't know.
My hope is that they lend it to real estate investors and developers.
My hope is that they don't pay major bonuses to
my God.
which is already happening. So, because that's what we had. That's what we had with TARP, right? The first thing they do with the bailout money is paid off
record bonuses. Yeah, record bonuses.
Yeah, but
history hopefully won't repeat itself.
But interest rates have gone down a little bit. I don't think projects that started in 21 and 22 were underwritten to support interest rates in the 6.5%, and certainly not in the 7s or 8s.
Yeah.
And so with interest rates coming back down, I locked in a rate of 6.5% on a permanent refi last week. My project is in a pretty good position. That project is stabilized now. I've got 5-year money on it at 6.5%. I can breathe and I can focus on stabilizing the next one. So, sweating at 7.25, but saving the 75 bips changed the game for me, right? Changed my investors' level of satisfaction with the project.
It's crazy how much different 5.5% rate is from a 6.5% rate on just like how it affects the returns and feasibility.
Yes, especially when the projects were maybe aggressively underwritten at 4%, right?
Sure.
You could survive at 5%, but you have to make serious changes to your project at 6%,
Right.
and you are underwater at 7.
Right.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But and so you're seeing today, in this environment, I have some land that I'm taking through entitlement, getting the permits, but 2 years ago, I would have been rushing to get to construction.
Right.
Right now, my investors are not clamoring for their cash, so I can take a little bit more time entitling it, a little more thought into the architecture and design to make sure I build a very efficient building so that I can control my construction costs a little bit better, so that I don't get into a situation where I'm ahead of my skis on the completed building.
Right.
Construction costs had a huge run up last year. And with the lack of the same amount of projects going forward, in 2021, I think there were 20,000 building permits issued in the city of Philadelphia. And in 2022, there were like 2,000.
Yeah.
And that was because of a change in the tax abatement. So everybody tried to advance their permit issuance to 21, right? So there's 21 projects that are all in construction. And I think that was like kind of, if you look at the future construction to be done in Philadelphia, like all that stuff that's in construction, as that construction wraps up, construction workers are going to be looking for their future pipeline of jobs, and there's going to be fewer of them. So could bring some labor costs down.
Yeah.
Material costs have gone up, but labor costs have really shot up. And so, and in my experience, it's been a lot of subcontractors really raising their fees. So maybe some of that pricing comes down. We're going to see, because the summer season is when construction picks up.
Right. I've heard a lot of subs are hungry for work, but maybe have not adjusted their pricing.
Downward. Yeah.
So it's happening. Right?
It is happening. I've had to replace a lot of subs on projects that just were not being realistic about the competitive forces out there, which is great because it forces you to get back in shape, right? Like, it's easy to get lazy working with the team you have. And if you have to go find new subs or new contractors and go find new relationships, you end up finding, potentially someone that could be with you for 20 years.
Yeah. It's the same thing with like insurance. It's like shopping for insurance or something. Like you have to shop it.
You have to shop. I mean,
except with brokers. But maybe not so.
Well, you shop with brokers by bringing the for sale product to the broker that really knows how to has the client base for that product, right? So you're not a raw land guy.
No.
You're a warehouse guy.
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Craig is a warehouse guy.
Craig's a warehouse
guy.
I'm an apartment guy.
You're an apartment guy. You're in a stabilized apartment cap rate guy.
Yes.
And you're a West Philly Center City guy.
Yes.
And when I say center, let's say greater
core.
Center City, core.
Yeah.
Not a suburban guy. You have suburban guys on your team.
I've done some suburban stuff too, but it's not my strong suit.
Right. And so, and you probably, what's your sweet spot for number of units? 30 doors, 40 doors?
20 to 30.
20 to 30 doors.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not necessarily bringing to Sam a 200 door development project.
No.
Because, I mean, you at Scope, you have the team that can find the right buyer for that. But
I have a handful of guys, right, who've built numerous, 30 unit projects and are looking to scale up.
Right.
And I know that's like, their business plan, but do I make most of my money doing that type of volume? Probably not.
No.
Right. But yeah, everyone kind of has to carve out their own market. Right?
And it's good. Like knowing where your strength is lets you focus more on that and build a reputation in that vertical, right? In that niche.
Yeah.
And, that's how we get along. Because where I stand as a buyer,
Yeah.
what I want. And when it does come across your desk, you say, this is something I'm going to float by Matan.
Yeah, and like just by the nature of our business, like we pull at strings and you never know what's on the end of it.
Sure.
And so we see all types of different
Yeah,
stuff.
I've been listening to your podcast about all the cold calling you guys do, and every no is closer to a yes. I like that.
That is true.
I like that.
It's the reality. And like I'm sure you have people cold call you all the time, right?
As a developer, yeah. As an attorney, I get a lot of solicitations for people who are looking for the wrong kind of lawyer, and they get me on Google because they put in the wrong search inquiry on Google, and maybe my SEO isn't as optimized as I need it to be. But yeah, as a developer, I always field the calls. I always field the calls because that person who brings me that deal today might be the wrong deal for me
at the moment.
But we're going to have a conversation. They're going to learn about what I like, what I'm looking for, what my strengths are.
You always remember something about them, usually. It's a decent call.
This morning, I got a call from a guy who had 30 units in Tennessee. And, I'm not in Tennessee, but he remembered I'm a 30-unit guy.
Right.
So, and he's a Philly guy, and he's tried to sell me some stuff in West Philly. And, the relationship is there. I always pick up the call. I always give people my time because it's an investment in my business. And, I don't want to be somebody that people look down their list and say, I'm not going to call that guy. He's never interested.
Right.
I don't want to be that
I have a lot of people on my list like
on
that. Yeah.
I hope you're calling them, though.
I do call them. It's a reluctant call, right. But it's funny. Like you'll have that same conversation 5 or 6 times where they're very cold or standoffish or busy or whatever. And then like the 7th time, they're like, hey, how's it going? Good to, tell me all about all the deal. Like, you never know how it is. So, and it's all about catching people at the right time in their business.
Well, it's funny because I built a triplex in West Philadelphia, and there was some land right behind it that you could build a triplex on. And I was very interested in it. And I was in the process of trying to find the owner of the land. And like the next day, it went up on MLS. Mm-hmm. And I knew the broker who had it. So I called him and I said, I'm interested in this. And we couldn't get to a price. He didn't know me well enough to know that if he actually had the other offer, when I told him my best and final would have still been hot. Like he could have come back to me and I would have beat that other offer. I really
Your best and final was not a best.
It never is, right? And like guys who know me know that, right? Yeah. Show me the other offer, and I want one last chance to buy that, right? And I owned the property next door, so he knew I owned the property next door, and he still didn't come back to me. I was a little pissed off about that, and I told him that, and he said, "But you gave me your best and final." I said, "Well, you should know it's not my best and final.
There's no such thing as a best and final.
Not. I'm not going to lose the deal for $2,000.
Yeah.
Right. And so 3 months go by, and I get a call from him out of the blue, and I'm excited because he at least knows I'm in the pocket. Maybe he's bringing something else to me. He says, the guy's getting FHA funding for that deal, and it seems like he's having some problems, and my seller wants to know if you're still in it. And I said, I am, but 3 months has completely changed the value of the property because of compression. Because all my costs are up. Construction costs are up. My loan to value is lower. My interest expense is up. The only place I can compress to build my same product is the land, right? So the land value has gone down. So it went from like 100K. I said, at this point, the most I'm willing to pay for this land is 60K. And he said, well, 3 months ago you were at, 100. I said, but I can't get a deal done.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tie up 60K for 3 years and wait till the environment's good again.
You're not running a nonprofit here.
Yeah. And he got really mad at me. And he said, a guy who owned his own construction company could do this. And I'm like, but I'm not that guy. And he started insulting me. And I felt insulted. And I said, is this how you're going to convince me to overpay for this land by insulting me and telling me I'm not good enough to buy this and I'm not a good businessman? And so I was a little upset. and the property is still available. And I don't think he's going to get his price, and he knows what my price is. And I think what he's calling me as the floor is going to become the ceiling. And if he comes to my price, hopefully, after he spent 15 minutes insulting me, he remembers me and comes back to me, and we get a deal done.
I hope he's listening to this podcast.
Well, I didn't want to name him because he probably listens to this podcast.
Oh, man.
It's quite reputable. A lot of people like him. I have nothing against him, but I think he just doesn't understand me as the buyer.
Okay.
And he's a really good realtor and really good at investment sales. He's not with Scope.
Okay. All right, let's change topic before we get into trouble.
Yeah.
We're coming up on like 45 minutes, which might be our longest podcast ever.
Fast.
It doesn't feel like that long.
Right.
You're an attorney. Let's get some free legal advice.
Okay. But let me give the attorney disclaimer. I'm an attorney.
Everything is binding.
I'm an attorney, but I'm not your attorney. So this is not legal advice specific to your situation, but it is just general legal advice.
Okay. What are some of the legal tax advantages of real estate and how to... All right, let's do it one at a time before I get overzealous.
I'll structure this. All right, so tax advantages of real estate, quite simply. Real estate, if you're operating it as a trade or business, your deduction, your ordinary and necessary business deductions can flow through to your personal income tax return. So if you generate losses in real estate, and a lot of real estate losses come in the form of interest expense and depreciation, okay? You end up with a net loss on the asset for the year that helps offset your income that you earned otherwise on your 1040, okay?
Okay.
So that's complicated. I use very specific language. You need to be actively in the trade or business. Otherwise, you run into something called the passive loss limitation rules, which is a very technical thing. But generally, people say real estate's great because you get a cash flow, but you get depreciation deductions and other expenses,
interest,
and like